What's up, y'all? We are back for stage 5 of the Tour de Zwift, second to last stage, penultimate. This week on Ocean Lava 8, Ocean Lava Cliffside Loop. You see it right there at the top. It is the shortest race so far, and it also has the least elevation, so thought hopefully we could do better than last week, because as we found out last week, sustained climbs are not our thing. So here's our stage profile. So you can see there's one big climb in the middle, a couple little kickers here at the start, one here, and then my strategy was to, because we found out, as I said, that the sustained climbs are not my thing. The strategy was to go really hard on this steep part and then just try to hold on this part, but this was definitely the part that I was most stressed out about going in. Any like sustained falls flat, like 1-2% uphill, is really like my biggest concern zone right now, because I feel like that's where the bigger riders who have more raw watts have a advantage over me a little bit. So I just hoping to hold on, and like I said, this steep part, I had estimated it was going to be about 2 minutes, and so I was going to try to put down about 300 watts for those 2 minutes. So going in here, we're at this first little kicker, just trying to, I knew I had to go a little bit harder than normal there, but just, you know, staying in contact with the group, trying not to burn any matches here, and then settle in here. You saw a couple people with anvils there. One other big difference of this route compared to last week or the week before is there's only one power up for the whole race, and it was either the feather or the anvil. So when we went through that first gate, I was really hoping for the feather, and I was glad I got it. A couple other things to note here. Let's see, I guess this stretch in the volcano, this was really frustrating me with the no steering thing, because I'm like stuck off on the left side here, and you can see my draft bar is low, and I'm like, why won't my guy just go to the right and be in the pack, and then with less effort I could be going the same speed. And even at the end of this volcano section here, the inside, it was frustrating me again. But after that, I was like, you know what, I can't control it, let's just put it out of mind, and focus on ourselves and just see how we can do. A couple other notes, looking at people before the race, you might have seen K Groves, he's right in front of me right now, pop up. That was the guy who passed us last week after the main part of the climb on that last little kicker. So I was looking out for him, trying to beat him. We couldn't quite catch him last week. And then another couple people I was looking for were, there's also K Sloop, who I thought was going to do well, and I'd seen in a few races before. And one other person I was looking out for was, I think it was A. Dishiara. I thought, just looking at the roster beforehand, I thought they'd be pretty strong. So somehow here I ended up at the front of the group. I wasn't even going that hard, but this is actually a really good sign, because I was concerned that in this flatter section, before the steep climb, I was worried people would be pushing a little bit. Like, I'm at 190 here, that's alright, 180, 190. I was worried it's going to be closer to 200. And that 10 watts makes such a big difference for me. Like here, my heart rate's still in the 170s, but it's not like, oh my god, I'm really working hard. It's like, okay, this is manageable, we have this under control. You know, nothing really to worry about. And so here I'm really happy with this. I'm like, okay, and you saw ADCR, a couple, their little name popped up. I was really happy about this. I was like, okay, if this continues until after this next little kicker, this next like downhill section and flattish section, I was like, then we can actually have a chance to do what we wanted on the steep part. This section here where we just switched onto the dirt, I knew it was going to be a little bit harder, so I was like, okay, I know I'm going to push here. So we'll see how that goes. But the goal I set of 300 watts for 2 minutes is fairly ambitious for me. It's about equal to my best 2 minute ever, and I was like, if I'm coming in a little toasty from having to do 200 watts the whole time, I'm like, I don't know if that's manageable. But if I'm coming in a little bit more rested, then I think it might actually be manageable. So here I'm trying to moderate my efforts while not dropping back too far. I was a little bit surprised that I fell so far back here, all the way to 50th, but still in contact with the main group. And yeah, just trying to stay in the little bit steeper part here. I was, put out a little bit more effort to try to move up a little bit, just making sure nothing goofy happens where a split opens when it shouldn't. But we're basically at the end of this little uphill section, so I'm like, okay, hopefully it calms down again, and we can get back to doing some recovery and get ready for that big climb. A couple other notes. I think we talked about this last week. My posture, I think it's a little bit better right now. I'm not quite super tired yet, but I moved the seat up and forward a little bit, the saddle, so just trying to get my posterior chain a little bit more involved. When I was powerlifting, that was always one of my strengths. I was deadlifting at my peak like 3 times my body weight, so my posterior chain was very strong. So I think with the seat forward a little bit more and up, I should be able to get my glutes involved a little bit more. You're not going to get your backs a lot in cycling, ideally, but just trying to make things a little bit easier for myself rather than just slamming the quads the whole time. Still not like super great posture, but also like looking towards, it's February now, soon enough we'll be going outside, so I want to get just a little bit more aerodynamic, and I need to be able to get lower for that. So not super relevant to the race, but it was something I was working on a little bit, and we'll see if that continues. So yeah, here we are, flat section again, and then we're down in the 160s. This is a dream. Really, really happy about that. There's one guy who's off the front. I guess he went harder on the previous climb. I'm not worried about that guy. I didn't think he was going to stay away, but if he did, all the more power to him. But I'm not trying to chase him. I'm just trying to stay in the pack here. Before the main part of the climb, there is a little bit of a false flat uphill, so I was like, okay, it's probably going to start going a little bit harder then, like right here at this boardwalk or the next dirt section, and then the following boardwalk. I thought it'd be going a little bit harder, so I was like, okay, get the last drink of water maybe, and then yeah, this hill, this boardwalk here is where it starts kicking off a little bit. So already you can see I'm up at 200 watts, and there's Case Loop popping up, one of the people I was looking out for. Yeah, they're my last drink of water before the big climb. Just getting myself psyched up for it, pushing a little bit higher than I wanted to on this section. I was hoping it would be 200, but 220 is not that crazy. It's only 10% more. And then unzipping the shirt here, I was like, all right, getting a little bit warm. I have a big fan going into me, but even then I was like, all right, just a little bit easier to breathe here. And so here the climb starts, and right away I use my feather, just because if I'm up on the pedals, I don't want to worry about like my balance when I'm leaning over to reach it. So it's probably better to use it a little bit later, but it was fine to use it there, just at the start of the effort. So I'm at right around 300 watts right now, which is close to what my target was. Some people have gone away. I'm not super worried about it. I'm really just trying to stick to my plan here, which was 2 minutes, and it started about 14:15. So it's like, all right, till 16:15, I'm going 300 watts. That's the goal. And I don't care about, like, there's a gap here. Ideally, you're not supposed to close gaps by yourself. For one thing, it's on a hill, so it's not as bad to do that. And the other thing is, I really just wanted to stick to my plan. Just really see if I could do it. I had a strategy going in, and I wanted to commit to it. And so here I am trying to power away the last bit of my 2 minutes, and I'm struggling here. You can see I'm at 188 BPM. I might even touch 189, and that's really my max these days, is 189. So I'm just really at my max, and I don't quite make it to the top of the steep part, but almost within those 2 minutes. And so I'm dropping down a little bit here to what I think is maybe a little bit like hopefully I can hold on to this, but now we're down into that false flat uphill. But the good news is we're in contact with the front group, so maybe I can hold on here. I'm still like really cooked from that hard effort, but the idea is, let's see if we can hold on, see what we can do. I'm looking at the map behind me here. There's a couple people who are barely catching up. But at this point, once these two people go by me, there's a gap to the next group. And when I see that, like, I'm the last one in this group, and it seems like right here after this turn, the people are going away just a little bit, I was like, oh man, because I was really feeling like toast. And I almost gave up here. I almost gave back up and went to the group behind me. But I was like, all right, we can commit just a little bit more. You're so close to the front group. There's no reason to give up. If you fall apart completely later, that's fine. Just try to stick with it here. And I'm glad I did. Like, mentally, I'm proud of that, because it would have been so easy for me as the last person in this group to give up and go to the group behind me. And honestly, if the person in front of me had let a gap grow, I probably would not have gone around them to try to get to this group. But since I was the last one and there were no gaps in front of me to speak of, I felt personal pressure to catch up. And sure enough, my heart rate's coming down a little bit. I'm dying here. I'm dying 1,000 deaths. You can see it on the camera. But somehow I've caught up mostly to the front people in this group. It doesn't feel like they're going away anymore. It feels like maybe I'm recovering a little bit. Like even the fact that it's bouncing between 200 and 210 instead of between 210 and 220, it's giving me like just, it's a little bit below what I need to do, like a little bit below what I can sustain. So with that, I'm recovering just a little bit, enough that even though I went super deep beforehand, I'm just barely able to hold on. And soon enough, we have a downhill. So at this point, I'm like, I still feel really tired, but I'm like, we can make it to the downhill. Just got to hold on a little bit further. And sure enough, like at the very end here, I think I even make it up to the very front of the group, which is a good sign. Like I'm dying, but these guys are probably dying too. And I see the group coming up behind us. I'm not worried about that at all. Like if they come together, it comes together, but I'm just trying to hold on to what the other people in the front group are doing here all the way to the end of the climb, and then regather in the downhill and then see what happens at the end. So we're finally at the top and we're going downhill. Now last week I talked about the super tuck, but I think when you're in a big group it doesn't do as much. So I was like, okay, let's just first of all pedal into the downhill a little bit. You don't want to just stop right at the top of the hill. You want to get some momentum going, and then you can start recovering, especially for a lighter rider like me. So now finally I'm just doing some light pedaling, right? This is just a recovery pace here, getting some water in, you saw, and just making sure I don't lose contact here. Somehow I end up in front again, but it's fine. I'm going easy enough that I'm not worried about it. And there's an even steeper section here where it's like, I guess even more important not to fall behind, but I think when you're in the middle of a big group, you're unlikely to lose contact in a steep section like this. Now when we come out of the bottom of this, I maybe should have been going a little bit harder a little bit earlier. I ended up on the front where I didn't want to be, and then I was still going a little bit too easy when the other people were going hard, so I probably had to go a little bit harder right here than I wanted to. But it wasn't a long sustained effort. It was just a few seconds up at 220, and then it's back to the recovery effort. And so then we're in another flat section. So now I'm thinking like, okay, I'm in a group of about 17, I think is what it was. And we're in the last 2 miles. It's mostly flat. There's a couple little bumps right near the end, but I'm starting to think, how high can I place? And it's kind of a matter of my recovery, right? And also a matter of how far out people go. Like if they go out from that first bump there, I think it's probably bad for me, because I don't know, I just don't feel like I have a long, maybe another 2 minute effort in my legs. But if it stays a little bit more under control, maybe I can do a sprint at the end. Any case, I'm just trying to again stay under control here, stay in the pack, not hit the wind at all, regather what I can, and pretty soon we're going to be in that last uphill section. I would say my posture, checking in on that earlier point of emphasis, is a little bit better than it was last week at this point of the race, 26 minutes in. So I think the saddle move is probably a good thing. I'm going to stick with it for another week. One other thing to note, my new trainer, they're sending me a new one as a replacement. That should be delivered today. But I didn't have it for this one. I was still on the old one. You can see the wheel there. But next week we'll be back on the direct drive trainer, so we'll see what difference, if anything, that makes. And then I guess a couple other things to note is checking in on people I was worried about beforehand. Case Loop is right here in front of me. She made the selection. A Groves did not. He was not in this front group, but then A D Chiara was. So, and then you can see here, we're on that uphill, and somebody's already started to go. I was like, oh no! And if I'm having to go 260 watts at that point to catch up, I was fairly concerned. I just didn't want to like to let a group get away. So I wasn't closing the gap myself necessarily, but I was maybe a little bit further up than I would want to be. And then I couldn't remember, like, I see there's 2 right turns upcoming. I knew that on one of the right turns is when I wanted to start my sprint, but I couldn't remember which one it was. So you can see me sort of ramp it up a little bit here. And then I was like, oh, that's probably not it. So I'm backing off a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, this is probably it. So I start going, and I'm probably too early there. I don't want to be in the wind quite that early with 1,000 feet to go. But in any case, here I am. And then the other thing is, I'm in probably a little bit too low of a gear. And I stayed seated. I need to figure out... In any case, we ended up getting 4th place, which is tied for our best result. And it was very close at the end. I guess we can go back and look at that a little bit slower. Playback, speed, normal. So, yeah. I think that I had the fitness to win this race, which is very heartening, and that was my biggest takeaway. My strategy worked. My fitness felt good. I think at this point it's just a skill issue, to be honest. Figuring out how to sprint, like get a really good sprint when I'm coming out of when I'm tired and coming out of an effort, like these couple minutes leading up to it. A fresh sprint I'm good at, but like amping it up from above threshold to an actual sprint is something I need to work on, and just figure out how to get the power down more effectively, because I don't think that was my most effective mechanically. Sitting down, a seated sprint is probably not ever going to be your strongest sprint, and just like learning how to know which gear to be in as well, because and also just the distances as well, and timings. It's just something I need to learn, something I need to work on. But in any case, like I said, the plan worked really, really well. We can look at the ride stats here. So this was the steepest part of the climb here. And it was a little bit under 2 minutes, a little bit under 300 watts, but for a goal, that's about as good as you can hope for. That was, I basically nailed that section. This next section, 207 watts for 6 minutes. In a void, not like an outstanding effort for me, but coming after that previous really hard effort, a good effort for me, and noting that my heart rate was going down a little bit, I was able to recover at 207 watts. Like I said, if that had been like a 213 watt average, I probably would have been off the back. I probably would have been kicked like to the curb and not been with the front group, but those 6 watts somehow made a difference, and I was able to stay with the group. And then at the end, yeah, like 2 minutes at 240 watts. Again, in a vacuum, that's not an outstanding effort, but I was already kind of tired from earlier on. I felt more recovered than I actually was in this section, so I was a little bit surprised that I was as tired as I was at the end, I guess. And then the final sprint of 22 seconds and 441, that's nothing great. That's like, if we look at my normal power curve, 22 seconds, I should be able to go 1.5 times as fast as that. And in that case, I probably would have been third or maybe even second. And then the other part is learning how to time the sprint, and that's what would really get me to first place. But in any case, very, very happy with this result. A big bounce back from last week. Next week finally is going to be on, oh yeah, I guess we can look at this too. So yeah, K-Sloop was in the front group, AD Chara was in the front group, and then where's our friend K Groves was one of the first people in the next group. So I feel like if they had been able to make that, I don't know, maybe they didn't scout out the route well enough, because I feel like they were strong enough to make that group, but it didn't work out for them that time. I'm sure next week they'll be back. Hopefully we can get a rubber match. And speaking of next week, it is on Richmond, I believe. Yep. I've been promising Richmond for a long time. And we can look at the profile here. So this is the profile for next week. A big downhill start, which will be interesting. I don't know if there's a power up, but that'll be a challenge, maybe, hopefully. Hopefully not a challenge. Hopefully I don't have to go too hard to keep up, because then what I want to do is go really hard on these 2 steep climbs right here and see if I can make a select group of maybe like 10 or 15 people like we had this time. And then, a couple kickers here. It doesn't look that much shallower than these two, but it is. Longer climb, stay under control there. And then draft a bunch, and see if we can do the strong sprint at the end while being tired. So that's the goal for next week. 6th and final race of the Tour de Zwift. 4th place this week. Again, really, really happy with that. And yeah, we will see you next week.